Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Say, and I'm with the Maryland Innovation and Security Institute and our Dreamport Cyber Mission Accelerator. Today, we have an exciting session that deals with the CMMC accreditation body and the long-awaited information on training. Today, we have Mr. Ben Jubinet. Mr. Jubinet is actually the chair of the CMMC Training Accreditation Committee, and he's doing incredible work with him and his team. This is a hardworking team. I know everyone's waiting for a lot of the information that we're going to talk about today. And with this, I'm going to introduce Ben. Hey, Ben, good to see you.
Hi, Armando. Really nice to see you as well. Thank you so much for having me here. This is really exciting. I'm so glad to be able to let the world know about what we're doing. Finally, we've been working really, really hard, and it's great to be able to talk about it.
Thank you, Ben. So, Ben, we're going to talk about training and what the pathway is going to be in terms of the model that you guys have written for this whole training scenario. And so I'm excited about this. And do you want to go ahead and tee up your first slide, Ben?
Sure. Let's do this. Okay. All right. So this is about the CMMC-AB training and certification framework. It's the product of a lot of work that's been done in the past few months by myself and my committee, as well as the rest of the AB board of the AB board, and also my working groups. I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of the hard work that's been put into this framework by the AB committee members, the board at large, as well as my working groups, my industry working groups that really helped me out with this. So we're going to do the training rollout in a phased manner. It's going to be two phases. First phase is the provisional program. It's going to be short term. It's going to be 3 to 6 months long. And it's really our initial training program, and it's really there for several reasons. It's really, first of all, to create training quickly to meet DoD's aggressive timeline, and to be able to get assessors out, to be able to go out there and do the initial assessments as quickly as possible. But at the same time, it needs to be very controlled, and it's going to have a limited scope really for learning purposes. We're going to learn a lot from the initial assessments and incorporate that into our formal program, as well as the lessons learned from the initial assessments are going to be incorporated into our assessment methodology. The formal program, on the other hand, is going to be a long-term program whereby we're going to create a program that's really a scalable, long-term educational system and ecosystem that is really built through major partnerships. And because of that, we're going to promote lots of innovation, lots of quality, but at the same time, flexibility and allowing for multiple formats like online or for educational, for colleges, universities, or training centers, lots of different formats. But at the same time, we're also going to be controlling the testing. It's going to go through us, and it's going to go based on standardized objectives, and we'll talk about that. So let's talk about the provision program a little bit. And again, Armando, feel free to ask any questions. So the training course material for the provision program is being developed by the DoD. It's currently under our review and their review. And we're actually going to have some test students sit through the course to make sure that it covers all of the needed content that we need. The course is developed to train assessors up to level 3. So students who come out of this course will be able to assess systems organizations at CMMC level 1, 2, or 3. Once we have the course material developed and we're happy with it, we're going to go out to industry and recruit what I call the first class of assessors who are going to sit through this course. Now, this is going to be a very select group of seasoned and highly experienced assessors, and we're going to look for 60 candidates to pass the exam and go through the course and pass the exam and be part of the first class. Remember, these guys are going to work with us in a very closed manner, under lots of control, and making sure that in its limited way, we learn from them and they learn from us. Now, the details of the application process have actually been worked out, and we're going to be getting that out there very soon to allow C3PAO organizations and their assessor candidates to apply. After they've applied and we've selected the 60 candidates, we're going to start their training sometime in the summer. Do you have any questions so far?
A great strategy. One of the questions that industry has about this particular strategy is the question as to how you're going to select these third-party assessment organizations. There's a lot of sort of angst about, hey, I want to be first, and we're trying to figure out, they're trying to figure out who is going to get selected and how that's going to work. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. I think it is a concern. But one thing to keep in mind, first of all, is that this is a limited group and it's not going to be an open market system. We will let them know who to go out and assess per DoD specific needs in a very limited way. So it's really going to be, I wouldn't call it as the first to go out. I would call it people who are going to help us perfect the system before we really open up to the world. The second is that we're going to be very open, and we talk about this a lot. We do talk about it a lot internally to make sure that we are open to accepting candidates from different size organizations. So we want to be making sure that not only large, medium, small size organizations can apply, but also even independent assessors could apply. It really will be about their experience, how much assessment experience they have, what previous certifications they have, and how they can help us. But we're also going to be very cognizant of the fact that we need to be open to different size organizations. But it is a limited pool that we need to use to really get out there and do this the right way to begin with before we open up the system to the world.
Counted for the challenges with COVID? I mean, I know that's a big question that is coming up in just about in every session about the AB and the third-party assessment process. The whole idea of limited travel, social distancing. So you're going to have these 60 assessors, and you're going to work with DoD to pick your initial set of target companies to go out and assess. Obviously, those companies have to be kind of ready as well, right, to be assessed, and so it's going to have to be some sort of parallel thing. But can you talk a little bit about the COVID challenge?
Yeah, on the training side, I spend many days looking through different online learning options, making sure that we develop our learning for the first class of assessors in a way that is highly effective online. So we will not be, and even the testing, we're looking at online mechanisms to do the testing so that once they pass their exam, they can do the assessments. In terms of the actual assessments that might occur, we're actually working with organizations within the DoD who have had experience doing remote assessments, and we're looking at the processes thereof. So those are all under review, and we want to make sure that we can effectively do as much as we can remotely.
Important sort of topic that I know that the DoD gets quite a bit. I know in my travels in the internet through cyberspace, it's a question I get from a lot of the companies around the country about how are these initial assessments going to occur when maybe their own employees may not even be comfortable with people coming, on site, or even their employees aren't totally comfortable in returning to work. So great. That's a great answer. It's like you guys are working on that strategy. I think I'm pretty happy that you guys are going to have some options dealing with the times that we're currently living in, since we don't know how long this is going to go on.
Absolutely.
That answer.
Now, in terms of the assessors, again, I want to make sure that we understand that this is going to be a highly experienced group. They're going to be doing the work in close collaboration with the AB. There's not going to be an open market system whereby they can be, sought after to do the work for companies that select to do this. But it's really going to be about, who we decide to do this, just so that we do this first learning phase as well as meeting the DoD timeline.
Ben, I'm sorry,
yeah.
Ben. Is there going to be a cost with this first phase, or the companies that get assessed are going to be expected to pay a fee for these initial assessments?
Yeah, the costs are going to be there. They're going to be discounted a little bit from the normal costs. And also, the initial assessors will need to come back and do the formal training. So there will be discounts for that, for them to do that. But there will be costs associated with the training as well as the assessments. They're just going to be discounted. We're going to do 3 and then up to 3. And then at some point, we're going to start looking at levels 4 and 5 as well. We don't have a timeline for that yet. Now, also, we've talked about this again, but again, this provisional program is going to be very controlled, limited rollout, but making sure that we have a rigorous implementation and that we kickstart our program in a way that meets our targets, but at the same time allows us to develop a broader and more scalable formal program later, which is going to take time. Now, here's the formal program. We've actually made lots of strides in creating a long-term program that will start by the end of the year or early 2021. And this is where we're going to actually be credentialing professionals, multiple levels, and we're going to be leveraging an extensive partner network, scale the training to meet our what we see as a huge market demand. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we produce skilled, professional, certified people who are going to be able to do their work in the best way possible. So we're going to use multiple content and training partners. As a result, because we have multiple content and training partners, as opposed to just being one single point of training delivery, we're going to promote innovation, right? We're going to promote higher quality through competition. And at the same time, we're going to be very flexible, and we're going to have partners who are going to be online, partners who are going to be semester-long university, college programs, partners who are going to do professional training for a week-long or 3-day program. So we really want to create a flexible system that allows for multiple formats. At the same time, we are going to be responsible, we as the AB are going to be responsible for creating and managing a centralized body of knowledge, or what we call the CMMC-BOK. And pretty much all the learning is going to be developed based on learning objectives that we define within the BOK. And thus, there's going to be standardization and high quality training is going to be required. And after the provisional program, it's going to be rolled out. And again, hopefully by the end of the year or early next year. Let me show you a little bit in terms of our initial certification track. This is the Assessor Track. Now, please keep in mind that we're going to have multiple tracks in the long run. Meaning maybe cybersecurity professionals or IT professionals or compliance officers or consultants. But at this time, we're going to start with our first initial track is going to be the Assessor Track. Now, the first certification will be the CMMC-AB Certified Professional. And that's going to be the baseline for all of our tracks. Obviously, right now, it's the prerequisite for the Assessor Track, but it will be the baseline course that all CMMC certified professionals would take. And it basically will be...
Pause there for a sec. So on the professional track, the criteria for that, is there any prerequisite? Do you have to have a CSFP or a Security Plus or some other sort of industry certification, college degree, non-college degree? Have you guys determined that yet at this point?
Correct. So we're we've created a very flexible program that's going to allow students to come into this program with either some cybersecurity experience, military experience, or a college degree. So it really is a very open track and system. There's going to be many different ways within which you can, based on which you can, be eligible to apply for our program. In fact, one of the main things that Ms. Arrington has required of our program is to allow any military veteran to be able to enter the program. So that's for sure. Besides that, a college degree or equivalent experience. And we're not necessarily, there's no specific certifications that we require. But again, when we say equivalent experience, that's going to include some of those certifications as well.
It's like rising seniors, or they're about to graduate and they want to go to industry. Is there going to be any internship where I'm a college student, I want to get into the cyber profession, I want to support the Department of Defense or the Defense Industrial Base, and I want to, while I'm in college, before I graduate, take the CMMC-AB certified professional track? Is that any thought process on that, or is that too soon for that?
No, absolutely. So remember, we're going to do this through partners, and really, and many universities and colleges have already showed interest in being educational partners. And so the hope is that, and the plan is, and we're seeing that, I've had many discussions already, that we're going to have universities and colleges provide these courses, either semester long or as a certification track, because many universities and colleges provide certification courses as well. So when that occurs, any student could be able to sit through and take these courses as well.
Very fantastic.
Yeah. Now, after the CP has been achieved, our first or initial track, once we go into the formal program, will be the Assessor Track. And so the first track will be the Certified Assessor at Maturity Level 1, or CA1. And, any CP can then sit through that class and then take the test. And as a result, they would be able to assess systems at level 1. Remember that based on the DoD's numbers, a very, very high majority of the organizations that are going to be seeking certification, what we call the OSCs, who are DoD contractors, are going to be only at level 1. And so we really want to create as many, or educate and certify as many assessors at that level as possible. Now, the next level is going to require a little bit more experience, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to attain, and that's going to be for level 3. And someone who is certified at level 3 or CA3 can then assess organizations that want to be CMMC maturity level 1, 2, or 3. And then the next class after that will be for 5. And again, it'll be more difficult to attain the level 5 certification. And remember, this is a prerequisite hierarchy. So we got to start at the bottom and get to the top. And the idea is that it's going to be fewer and fewer people who are going to get to the level 5. Again, the market need isn't there either.
I'm assuming that you guys have a cost model for the different levels. Does it cost more to be level 1 certified than to get the CMMC-AB certified professionals? Costs more to be level 3 certified than level 1 certified, and so on and so forth? Is that the way you guys are looking at it?
Yeah, keep in mind that the pricing for our certifications are going to be in line with the industry. But in fact, it's the opposite. It will be costing less to start at the bottom, and the cost increases as we go up. So the challenges are also going to increase, and the experience requirements are going to increase. But it's also a much more advanced and specialized course, let's say at level 5. So by its very nature, the cost will be higher at the top than at the bottom. We want to be able to, open our CP program to as many students as possible. We have.
I talked about this. I'm sorry, Ben. If you're level 3 certified, you can do level 1, right?
Of course.
You can do level 2,
or 3. Yeah, okay. 1, 2, or 3. So at level 5, you would be able to do any network, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Another question that always comes up is, okay, well, how often do I need to retake, right? So the CMMC model, which is under the DoD control currently, there's going to be newer versions that come out all the time. The CMMC-AB standard, which is the model along with all kinds of other guidance that the AB is going to put on top of it, our version numbers are going to be matching these version numbers of the model. However, the idea right now is that we would only require our certified professionals to recertify for major upgrades. So if the model goes from 1.2 to 1.5, there won't be a need for recertification. But if it goes from 1 to 2, then we would need to recertify. Now, if to stay abreast of the updates, there's also CEP, continuing education program credits that all certified professionals would need to have on an annual basis to maintain their knowledge. One thing, if let's say someone is certified at level 3 and then the model upgrades, they will not need to go back through the entire hierarchy. They would just simply take an upgrade exam at level 3.
One, I hate to keep bringing up this very unpopular individual called COVID.
Yeah.
But when it comes to training, what about you're going to have an LMS system, for instance? Will you be able to do this remotely? Is this first group of 60 going to be required to come in groups of socially, distance, smaller groups, or what are you guys thinking? Second part of that question is, I'm in Hawaii, you guys are just starting out. There's no way, if it's going to be a physical in-classroom thing, it means, I got to go all the way across the country to get trained, right? Unless you have some ability for me to participate online. So it's kind of related, but I just thought I'd put the geographic.
Yeah. Now, remember, the provisional program is going to be all online. It's not going to be live. And we're talking to several vendors right now to select an LMS system, as well as, a way to share homework and those kinds of things. The long-term program, again, is going to be very flexible and open. And again, it's for the long term. So we're hoping that we're going to get out of this situation within a year or so. And even if within 2 years, we're really thinking long-term here. We're thinking in terms of creating an infrastructure and an ecosystem that allows for any format of training. Right?
So that's because I talked to universities, several of them, throughout the weeks. And as we work with STEM and college students on cybersecurity related issues, the universities that had traditional in-classroom, mostly sort of curriculums have all pivoted to, let's see how much of this stuff we can get online. Obviously, there are universities that have a lot of online content, but I think this whole situation has definitely required some rethinking. So this is really good, because I think that's another question that industry pretty much has is, where am I going to take these courses and how crowded it's going to be? So good.
That's right.
Sounds like you guys have it well thought out.
Yeah, thank you. The next slide here is simply a description of the different certifications. We pretty much talked about this. Now, the additional certification here that was not on the previous slide is the certified CMMC-AB instructor at the bottom here. And the instructors are going to be also certified, and they will be able to train at the level they're certified within the hierarchy. So if someone is a CMMC-AB certified instructor, means trained by us to be able to train our classes, then and then take an instructor test, but they're also a professional and only a professional, then they would only be able to teach a professional class. But if they're at assessor level 3, they would be able to teach the professional, the assessor level 1, and the assessor level 3 classes. Of course, if they're at the top, at the assessor level 5, they would be able to teach all of the classes. Now, this one is the framework itself and how we're going to leverage partners. If you look on the left, this is where we are, CMMC-AB. And we're going to start out by creating the CMMC BOK. We talked about that. That's the body of knowledge. They basically contain all of the information online that anyone's going to need to be able to run a CMMC practice, ESC through PAO, an assessor, or a compliance officer internal to an organization, or a consultant, or an IT person, or a cybersecurity professional. All those things, all of the information will be here, but it's going to be in a reference format, right? The model itself, the standards, the practices, the implementation guidance, the validation guidance, the scenarios, and of course for learning objectives, like what you need to know for each exam, for each of the certifications in the box below it, right? However, we're not going to.
Yeah. Is that going to be something that you guys charge for?
So
CMMC BOK, is that going to be something you charge for?
So the initial version is not going to be charged. We're not going to charge for it. It's going to be free and open. We may later, and this is a big maybe, create a lot more value on the BOK website and charge for it. But honestly, initially, this is pretty open standard at this point.
Yeah, just put the term BOK on the end reminds everyone of the PMP, right, and the PM, the PM BOK and all that kind of good stuff. So no, I got you. But really good. It sounds like a really good initial strategy as you mature the body of knowledge. It gets more value, and maybe then it's something that may have a cost where you guys are having folks that are formally publishing things.
Yeah, but whatever it may be, it'd be really basic. But it would really be just to cover its own expenses, honestly. Because remember, the AB is a nonprofit. So, but for now, it's going to be hopefully be very helpful information to get us started. You don't want to charge for it. However, it's going to be reference based. Again, it's not going to be an educational format. It's going to be just for people who know what they're doing and to refer back to the BOK as their guidance. That's where the LPPs come in. So the LPP, or a licensed partner publisher, is going to be partnering with the AB to create curricula that's going to be approved by the AB. It's going to be for in-person or online consumption, for professional training, or for university format, semester long or 4 or 5, whatever. I mean, again, that is all dependent on the partner's market that they want to meet and they want to serve. And then we're also going to have licensed training providers, or LTPs, and they're going to be delivering the certified training using the approved curricula and courses that are going to be obviously taught by certified instructors or facilitated by certified instructors. Obviously, for online courses, sometimes we have a facilitator, not an instructor. And a student, thus, who wants to be going through our certification path, and whether it's an assessor track or the future tracks that come in, is going to attend the training at any LTP. Again, these LTPs can be professional schools, they can be universities, they can be colleges, they can be online websites, but they would just be licensed by us to train students for the certified tracks. And once they've trained, they would be able to take our exam. It would be delivered by us. Right now, we're looking at vendors. We're going to send out an RFP very soon for selecting the exam delivery agency that's going to help us deliver the exam throughout the globe and also help us develop it. And then, once they take the exam, they'll be certified, and then they will take the continuing education program classes, CPEs, or continuing education credits, and on an annual basis to maintain their certification as well as upgrade whenever needed. And that's really it. This is really our long-term formal training and certification framework.
So Ben, on this slide, let me ask a question relative to college credits. Is that something you guys are working on?
So we're going to need some work on that. I know that mapping our certifications to college credits is not a short-term process, right? It could take some time. And it's par for the course that at some point, either universities themselves will do this, or we may work with national organizations to do this, right? To map to college credit. But we're not ready to do that at this point. We're just getting started. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that we're going to keep improving this program. And what we've done is created a framework that allows for that allows not only for scalability, but ongoing evolution and improvement. This is the slide here. It just simply describes the LTP and the LPP. The publishers are the ones who create the content, and the providers, the training providers, are the ones who are using that content. Another question that might come up is, well, can we be the same? Can one organization be both an LPP and LTP? Of course, they can. In fact, this is something that I want to make sure everyone understands, is that one single person could have a company. That person could be a certified instructor as well as a certified assessor, of course. They have to be an assessor to be a certified instructor. And their company could be a LTP and an LPP. Right? Now, they can also, if they're a certified assessor, their company can be a C3PAO. So one single person can be all of the above. Now, on the other hand, we could have multiple companies, large organizations working together. We could have a large publisher, that's an LPP. We could have a large training organization or university system, that's an LTP. We could have multiple certified instructors working within those environments. And of course, assessors could work with multiple C3PAOs. So again, this ecosystem is going to be as simple or as complex as the market requires.
Hey, Ben, we have a number of questions that we want to get into that have come in through your website. There's literally hundreds of questions, and we won't have time to ask them all, but we're going to try to get a couple of these in. So the first question that I have for you that's off the website is, please explain a notional career path for me to help me chart a path as I want to become an assessor with a 3 PAO. So I think you kind of talked about that in the slides, really, didn't you?
Yeah.
Kind of address what the different levels were, where you start out as a at the professional level, the basic level, and then you climb up. So that's really the answer. So to the person who asked that question, when you look at the slides, it kind of will explain that to you exactly what the path is for how do you climb up. And you can do it independently, or you can do it as part of your company, or you can do it as part of another organization. So if you want to get your credentials separately and then go apply for a job somewhere, or become an entrepreneur. Right, Ben?
That's right. That's right. And again, or through a university partner.
Right. And here's another question, which I think we've answered as well. It says, do assessors performing level 1 or 3 assessments, do they have to be cybersecurity professionals?
Yeah. So again, we really want to keep that open, right? I think it's important to have cyber knowledge, but we're going to be doing a lot of training in the CP program. Because we want to be open to people who have relevant experience, but a broad set of experience, right? So the CP program will cover a lot of cyber knowledge, or we may drive a lot of further requirements in the later stages. So for someone to become an assessor level 1, they may have more cyber requirements than the CP program, right? So being a CP, you still need some cyber knowledge, but that cyber knowledge could be based on experience. Doesn't necessarily need to be a certification.
That's a great answer. Here's another question relative to being an assessor and having tools. So I'm an assessor and I have my own set of tools, and I use those in my existing FedRAMP practice. Is the CMMC going to require me to have another set of tools to collect information that allows me to conduct my assessment? or can I continue to use the tools that I use, particularly for my current 800-171 sort of assessment practice?
Yeah. Short term, there's going to be specific tools. The hope is that long term, we do open it up and create technology that allows for communication between multiple tools. But in the short term, we don't have the tools selected yet. But in the short term, there's going to be a limited set of tools that we would allow. It's really par for the course, right? As we develop, that's going to be one of those things where we hopefully going to be more and more open.
Can organizations get people trained but not become an assessor or a 3PAO?
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's where the CP program comes in. And again, the hope is that we create even further tracks that are not necessarily for assessors, right? But for now, it is actually recommended that you put your people at least through the CP program once it's available, because that's what's going to teach your people how to understand CMMC and how to implement a network that is going to be CMMC compliant, so that you have an easier time when your assessors come in.
Okay, here's that unpopular individual again called COVID, but I think we kind of answered this, but the question really pertains to whether or not the certification schedule or assessment training schedule has changed due to the challenges of COVID-19.
I think COVID-19 has been challenging for everybody, right? And it's been a challenge for us because we've had to do all kinds of things remotely. However, we've been pretty good about pivoting, doing everything remotely, not meeting in person. You know, I don't think COVID-19 is specifically a reason for any delay. If there is delays, it's because we want to do things right, not because of COVID-19.
Fantastic. So let's see, let's pick another question. Let's see what we got here relative to another question. So the CMMC's initial training pedagogy, an interesting word, I always have problems with it, will be critical for a successful rollout to the defense industrial base. What steps have already been taken in the development of the pedagogy?
Yeah, so long term, what I would say pedagogical mechanisms, yeah. But that's just how I say it. Everybody says it differently, right?
Right.
But, you know, that's going to be a big part of the learning objectives and us allowing the publishers to select, our partner publishers, to, yes, meet our learning objectives for the exam, but select the pedagogical approach that is best for their marketplace and their students and their student audience. And that could be a very different approach if it's professionals versus college students versus online. You know, it's that's why we've created a scalable and open system to allow for multiple approaches.
Okay. I'm looking at the clock here. We're going to scroll through another question. I see a question here, but I think the slides answer that particular question. The question was pertaining to whether a company could hire a subcontractor to do their assessment and whether that subcontractor would have to meet the requirements of the CMMC-AB. And of course, the answer is absolutely. Otherwise, it's not an assessment. It's not an accredited assessment if it's not someone who's credentialed to do that assessment. But
remember, as a company, you can hire a CP or a consultant who is certified professional. And hopefully we'll have more advanced classes later for this purpose, to come in and take a look at your network to make sure that it is compliant. However, if you want it to be actually assessed and be accepted as an assessment by the AB, you need to hire a C3PAO that is going to be using certified assessors to do the assessments. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's very clear. So this next question is one probably, Ben, that we probably won't have an exact answer for, because it deals a lot more with how DoD contracting officers will interpret contracts. And I think I know who could answer that, and that would be you or I on this in this particular session. So we'll roll past this one, because anything to do with the contracting officer or program managers under the domain of the Department of Defense.
Yeah, but we keep in mind that the DAU that trains the acquisition folks and the contracting folks within the DoD is in fact in touch with the CMMC-AB. In fact, I just sent an email, received an email from the AO this morning. So we do work with them, and we are going to be in sync and aligned in our approach.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to get in a couple more questions here, but I see some that I already know you've already answered. Here's one that I think we didn't really cover in the slides in the presentation is what training will be offered to assessors that have to work as a team, office and networks in multiple CONUS and OCONUS locations to ensure that there's a seamless review and nothing is missed. Frankly, I was working with a NIST 800-171 current, third-party assessment organization, and they talked about when they are doing an assessment for a large, multi-billion-dollar corporation, it's a pretty heavy lift to cover all of the divisions and the segmented network. So I think they're asking, about that training and what do you think the model should be from that perspective?
Yeah, this is actually a great question, and I should have covered it. And I'm so glad you brought it up because we actually haven't talked about it yet. So yeah, there's going to be teams of assessors that are going, and sometimes larger teams. In the long run, our larger assessments need to be led by a certified assessor.
Okay.
But the team members must be CPs. So they have to be at least certified professionals, as long as they're led by a certified assessor.
That's a great answer, and I'm glad I did ask that question because that's very important. The fact that you can have a large team and they have to be led by someone at the appropriate level. The sub teams, maybe either technical people or examiners or testers or interviewers or whatever, they at minimum have to be accredited at the CP level. And that's also a question I have for you. In the current NIST model, when you do an assessment, I think it's called the examine, interview, test. Is that right, Ben? And in terms of the training that the assessors are going to get, it's kind of based around that kind of framework?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're going through and making sure that all the different validation mechanisms, I call it validation. I come from an RMF background, but, there's different names. We call them controls. The CMMC calls them practices, right? So, it's all the same thing. The CMMC-AB has put a lot of effort from the very beginning of our formation, right from the start in January, using industry working groups to create our own version of the assessment guidance with support of the DoD, and that's going to be really what's going to be trained to the assessors, right? How do you assess particular practices, and then what is the entire umbrella implementation guidance in terms of the process of assessment from soup to nuts.
Fantastic. So here's another question. It pertains to data and processes in terms of how the assessors are going to be trained. So are the assessors that you train, is there going to be a CMMC-AB non-disclosure that assessors issue? Or are the individual assessment companies going to execute their own non-disclosure agreements as a commercial transaction between them and the company being assessed?
There's certainly going to be templates that are going to be used for legal agreements. I'm sure they're going to include NDAs. We don't have them formalized yet, but that's kind of really coming very quickly. The assessors, of course, for us, are going to sign a code of ethics, and there's going to be an assessor agreement, certified really assessor agreement with the CMMC-AB in terms of their requirements, in terms of how they do their work. But in terms of each assessment, that would be between the C3PAO and the organization that's seeking the certification. But there will be a legal framework that the AB will create for that.
Yeah, that's good. I think as assessors look to be trained, they're wondering if am I getting training? Am I getting a set of tools? Am I getting
That's right.
That is approved by the AB to be utilized in my assessment practices with the individual organizations.
Now, keep in mind, this is another reason for the provisional training program. People might say, well, why are you even doing this first 60? Why not just open it up? Well, because we want to make sure that this entire implementation guidance, this assessment methodology that we have is actually working. We want to learn from those lessons. And we don't want to just start out a formal scalable program of educating assessors and putting them out there into the world, 1,000 people at a time, without really going through and creating a solid system.
Okay. Well, Ben, this has been great. I'm looking forward to more information from your group. I want to thank Cisco. I want to thank your team for all the hard work. You guys are this unpaid group of warriors behind the curtain that people are waiting to see what you're producing, sort of thing. And so it's exciting, the contributions that you're making to the nation. While, we always talk about, hey, let's not let, perfect, be the enemy of the good kind of thing. And that no one expects perfection. You guys are constantly listening as you're producing product, and that this thing is really important for the nation, because right now the adversarial climate is pretty aggressive and will continue to be so. And the adversary is always going to be looking for the organizations that are not prepared to make it difficult for them to take the $6 billion in intellectual property that they already take out of the defense industrial base. So again, I want to thank Cisco. I want to thank your organization as the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Accreditation Body. I want to thank you and your team for all the hard work. And this has been great, and I think it's going to be exciting.